Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EAMC podcast. This is your all-access pass to go backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live entertainment industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to some of our favorite people as we dive deep into the world of live touring shows and the venues that host them.
Today's adventure takes us for the very first time on Adventures in Venueland to Puerto Rico, San Juan, right off the beaches, where we are talking with the Vice President of International Business Development for the Oakview Group. Please welcome Wesley Cullen. How you doing?
Hi guys. I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
You're also the first guest we've had to do a podcast while in your car. A lot of our listeners listen in their car, but you're the first one to actually record in the car. Sounds like you're having your own adventure today.
Always. Life is an adventure. And yes, today's involves demolition and some electricity adventures in Puerto Rico.
Always something fun, right?
Yes.
Well, tell us about your current role, because I know that this is kind of, I'm so excited to talk about your adventure because you've had such a great path in and out of this industry and out and back in, but you've got a very cool new role here, and tell us all about it.
Yeah, it is. I love it. I'm very excited and happy to be doing it. So I'm working with OVG, Oakview Group, that people in the industry are starting to get more and more familiar with. And I know you've had some great guests on, like Jeff Nickler, to help spread the good word. But this is, founded in 2015 by Tim Leiweke and Irving Azoff, and really doing cool and innovative things. The tagline that I absolutely loved is one I use personally in my life, and then saw OVG was using, about positively disrupting, really. And the fact that in the venue space, there's still so much opportunity for innovation. And these guys have always been innovators in the business. So they are not only doing we are not only doing amazing things in the United States, but around the world. And I've gotten to join the team to help bring more amazing venues to amazing cities around the world.
Talk to us a little about your current role, where you are, this is something that we've not had anybody with this title. So what does it mean to be the Vice President of International Business Development?
I'm still learning. But the most exciting project now, because there is a lot going on and it's super cool.
Yeah.
Let's see how far we zoom out. But so in my case, just to be more clear there, we are building an arena in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So part of it is helping lead that relationship from where we're just getting started on the design till we open it, build the team, and develop and deliver the greatest arena in South America. So that is super exciting. So I have a particular focus on South America, and that has to do with my background and the fact that I'm in Puerto Rico today, coming to you from the car, and loving working in Latin culture and countries. And there's a lot of exciting things going on in Latin America that we can talk about if you like, and Sao Paulo is certainly part of that. OVG also has projects literally all over the world. So many of the arenas that at one point were great are now over 30 years old, sometimes 40, 50, legacy historic buildings that we adore and have so many wonderful memories. But new ones are just way cooler and they're also more sustainable, right? You're applying new technology, and, there's amazing renovations that we do and that occur. But, building new ones is so exciting. And when you talk about OVG does it through private funding. So it also just makes it so much more efficient and opens up a lot of possibility that when, I spent 10 years working with an SMG managed facility, the Coliseo de Puerto Rico. When you're a management company, it's a different approach sometimes. So it's super exciting. So in terms of my role, I work with an industry legend named Brian Kabatsnik, who has done international development for Ticketmaster, SMG, and AEG. So he knows the entire world of venues, like nobody else in the world. This morning we were on a call with his old friends. He didn't just meet them in Gothenburg, Sweden, and all over the world. He every day he's talking to everyone and talking about exciting possibilities. And so I get to join the team of doing that as well.
I think that's one of the really exciting things that we hear again and again from our different guests with Oakview Group is, it's growing at a fast speed, which, I'm sure creates its own challenges, but there is so much innovation and there is so much growth opportunities. Whereas sometimes, within certain companies, I don't want to say certain companies are kind of resting on their laurels, but, you get certain venues and you sort of just, keep them maintaining and maybe add one here or there. Whereas it seems like that's a really big active part of Oakview Group's mission is acquiring new properties, building new things, developing new things. So, I know in the continental states, it has grown rapidly over the last, 2 or 3 years. And so I'm sure that's kind of an exciting thing to be a part of that on the international scale, as I'm sure they're, like you're mentioning, down in Brazil, but also all over the world. They're probably looking to expand dramatically there too.
Yep. And it's almost having to select opportunities because it is a new company that's growing so quickly. But it's also, we have quality standards and have to be able to deliver. There's a lot in the pipeline, but it's super exciting and there's place for both, right? There are, thousands of venues around the world. So some of them, it's chill. They're chilling. They're maintaining. You always have room for innovation and the ability to grow and do more. But not everyone wants to do that right now. But there's a lot of exciting cities and projects. And you think about just focusing on capital cities and how many countries there are in the world and the type of events that they like to have, the diversity of what you get to do with venues is, for me, that's what I love. I love it. So yeah, it's exciting. And to get to work on building those relationships, exploring those possibilities and building or renovating those arenas is what I get to work on every day.
You mentioned, the obviously the different cultures, and talk to me a little about the international experience as far as live music goes. Is it pretty similar to what we know here in the States, or is there a deeper fan base, or what is the live music experience like? Particularly when you're talking about a place like Brazil.
I think there's things that are universal and things that are local everywhere, right? So each band generates its own vibe and has its own culture, as it were, right? So how the audience likes to dress and behave when they show up, all of it, whether they want to be standing or seated, if it's a GA or it's a reserved, all of that. So it's about what the audience wants. And there's a lot of similarities there. And that's where venues are designed with flexibility more and more these days, right? That's one of the innovative aspects. Right? Like Moody is so cool how the the acoustic mesh panels instead of old school curtains and stuff like that just makes it, when you focus on the fan experience, makes it so much cooler and more innovative and gives you more flexibility. And then, Latin and Brazil, and you think about soccer cultures and the type of music, it's high energy. So it is a really high energy fan base that is giving a lot. Versus there are other countries where their way of expressing themselves might be a little lower, or a little, less loud. And then there's some, Brazil's on the louder side. It's this big country, with a lot of population. Think about Carnival, right? It's an out loud kind of event, and that's one of the iconic events of the country. So I think it's great fan base, great audiences. It's why it makes it a great market, and they create a new space for artists to perform.
And we just had Iron Maiden at Nationwide Arena here in Columbus a couple of days before we recorded this podcast. But I ran into, on the plaza, a couple of fans from Brazil.
Cool.
And they were talking about how they saw the band, on the tour throughout South America. And you wouldn't necessarily think of Iron Maiden as a big band that's got a huge international following. These guys, they were carrying their Brazilian flag with them. But one of the gentlemen there, it was his 165th time seeing Iron Maiden. Which, so there's obviously a wide variety of music that's popular there.
Rock is huge, and it's awesome. Brazilians, Argentinians, Chileans, all kinds of people. Everyone around the world, right? They like to rock just like everybody else, and go for it. So yeah, it's a fun place.
When you're building a venue. Again, anywhere that's not your hometown, right? You really have to, get to know the local aspect, because being a part of the community is such a key piece to success. Talk to me about being in Puerto Rico, but thinking about building an arena in a city that you may not be as familiar with.
That's the adventure, right?
Exactly, yeah.
In Venueland.
Venueland is the conduit for the amazing adventure, and we get to do something amazing. So that's what I love. My whole career has been, and my whole life, about that. And it's bringing people together across cultures. So it's a lot of learning. The other day I heard a great line, and so I'm going to start using it, and you guys are going to be the first ones to hear it, I think. I travel a lot, right? So where do you live? And the line is, I'm living wherever I am. My mail goes to Puerto Rico, so Puerto Rico's home.
I love that.
Yeah, right? So, because I'm living here with you guys right now. So my home is Puerto Rico, and it's where I want to come to recharge and refresh, and my community and some of my family is. But Sao Paulo is my new kind of home. I have to care about that just as much as I care about where I live, because what we're doing, and I don't want to be like hyperbole about it, but our industry and our careers on the venue side is awesome. Sometimes people think it's boring because we're not the promoters. It's awesome. We get to build these things that completely change cities and bring people together. And I love it. So that's why I'm doing it. So Sao Paulo for me is I'm consuming and learning everything I can about it. I'll spend more and more time there. And I'm curious and enjoy that, and it's hard work sometimes. I have multiple times a week, I'm on Zooms with 37 people, because you're bringing together a lot of people and across a lot of cultures. And inclusion, which is a passion of mine, it takes time and it takes patience and it takes a lot of curiosity, but that's kind of my nature. So I'm enjoying learning about it, and it's important, I think, to do so, because while it's something I'll be very proud of, we're doing it for the city and people of Sao Paulo. So I wouldn't know any other approach. And I think everyone who works on venues probably feels the same way.
I love many of those terms you mentioned, like curiosity and the adventure and stuff like that. And I do think maybe that is a through line for you, is if you enjoy traveling so much, I think you have to have that, almost comfort in being uncomfortable. And maybe uncomfortable is not the right term, but being out of your element, but embracing that and really kind of embedding wherever you are, but also appreciating that every culture, every location is unique and different. And that's what makes them special. You don't want to change, and, you don't want to make everyone the same, because then that, what fun is that? You need everyone to kind of live their best life in their own way, and let Brazil be Brazil, and let Puerto Rico be Puerto Rico, and all the European countries. It's kind of this beautiful thing. But is that one of your sort of attractions to travel and, going to different countries? Do you just have you always loved that type of adventure?
Yep, for sure. It's in my DNA, I'm pretty sure. And I grew up moving, and it's what I love the most. The world is so diverse and amazing, and I just love discovering it and interacting with and bringing together all the people all over the place. I don't care if it sounds cheesy.
No, I love it. I think that's beautiful.
No, not at all. Not at all. First of all, I love that I live where I am. I love that. That's great. Yep. So where are you from originally?
Oh, well, we don't need to take the whole time for that. It's a long story. My parents are American, from New England, and I was born in Spain. We left when I was about 8 months old, though, so that's not. I was definitely born in Spain. It's part of where my soul is from, and then kind of moved around a lot from there. So I went to a lot of schools before I graduated, but a little bit of it was abroad, and a little bit of it was New England. Yeah,
because you spent some time studying history in college.
I did, yes. And then as part of that, I also went to Spain again for a year abroad in Sevilla. So I always was kind of drawn back to Spain and wanted to learn to speak Spanish. And sometimes, I kind of look like one thing on the outside, but my soul's a little bit different on the inside. And really, it was culture that I felt that I relate to.
Well, talk to us about getting from that young woman studying history in college to becoming the international manager of live events for WWE back just a few years ago, maybe the early 2000s.
Yes, a few years ago. I don't know how it's so many, but life flies. Well, it was an unexpected turn, not something I ever in my life thought I would have been doing. especially since part of that international upbringing was not the military. It was much more a peace and love kind of environment. My parents don't like to be called hippies, but kind of that kind of vibe. So to end up working at wrestling was unexpected, but there were some personal reasons surrounding the timing that it worked out for me, but also it was an opportunity where I had kind of gone discovering that I liked this events industry through other experiences. And it was an opportunity to learn more about it and then to do international work. And all I wanted to do was travel around the world and make the world a better place. And so I got to do that. And it was just really incredible. And we can talk about how that opportunity came about, if you like.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, did that for a little while. And from there is where I got to Puerto Rico by kind of design. So yeah, I can jump around there and whatever you might be interested in.
Absolutely. I mean, I think so much, people plan so many things in their lives, and there's so much, I don't know, randomness that really has to be thrown into the mix. And I think that's part of the beauty of life.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes it's not even the things you want. And then all of a sudden it ends up being the things you want because, life throws you a curveball and you have to do your best to anticipate it and, have fun and adapt. But yeah, I mean, I would love to learn more about it. So, I mean, how did that all develop?
So I think there's like two kind of overarching lessons, and then I can tell you my stories from them. And one is like, you got to go for it. But the other is that before you go for it, you have to know what you want. And that
yeah.
So I arrived to Puerto Rico by design. And I'll, come back to that. With WWE, I was still young and didn't fully know what I wanted my life to look like. And of course, that can change at any time. But I had an idea of what I didn't want. By the time I graduated from college and had a couple different jobs and internships, I had at least narrowed down some of that. And my driving force was travel and discover the world. And then discovered, okay, I like organizing things. I always liked leading things. Since I was little, I like to be in charge. And that lends itself well to events, right? I'm collaborative and empowering. It's not about, in a bad way, but I think anyone who works in events and venues is someone who's willing, says, yes, I'll take that responsibility and make that happen.
For sure.
And so while I randomly get this opportunity, like you said, sometimes it's luck, random, it's all the whole long backstory of how it happened, but I randomly get this opportunity to work at WWE, and I'm there kind of on a temporary basis. And the opportunity comes up where there's a gap and there's a need for someone to work on international things.
Right, because there'd been like a decade where they really hadn't focused on the international window.
Exactly. And they'd hired somebody to come in and develop that because there was TV distribution around the world. So you could do events around the world. Again, they had at one point. And so a man came in to lead that initiative, but then that didn't work out. And he went on and took another role. So it had started in motion, and it was kind of like, all right, well, who's gonna take this and run? What do we do with this? So at that moment, I raised my hand and was like, I want to do that. Me, Wesley over here, who really doesn't know a whole lot about what's going on.
But you volunteered, right? You put your hand up.
Yeah. But I was learning how the company worked, how booking worked. I was, in that department. And I guess it shown myself to be, a quick learner and curious and wanting to. And so I was given the opportunity. And I'm super grateful for that. And it was absolutely amazing because from there I got to go on and, research and get to know countries, venues, and promoters around the world, and then work on these tours around the world and do events and all over the world. And it was absolutely incredible and learned so much and experienced so much and got to contribute a lot too, I think. We did a lot of great things.
Yeah, I mean, you are all of a sudden you find yourself routing, booking, planning, managing events, Australia, Finland, Germany, Ireland, Malaysia, Mexico, right? Thailand. So you've got all of a sudden, was there a moment when you're like, am I really cut out for doing this? Or were you just kind of faking it until you made it?
Yes and no, right? I think that I have a little trouble with those words because learning isn't faking it, right?
Sure.
And it goes toward, I've had to think a lot about imposter syndrome and stuff like that, because of course I do suffer it. But learning isn't faking it. Learning, I can say I'm learning it and be adding value at the same time. But essentially, towards the essence of what that means, yes, I was jumping in, and that's always, I think that's always been the case in my career, and it's the case in anyone's career growth, is that someone has to say, we'll give you the chance to do what you don't already know how to do. That's the next step. It's a stretch, right? And so I'm, grateful to some people along the way who said, give her the chance. I vouch that she'll learn quickly enough rather than, yeah, she's got it, right? And so I got the chance to learn quickly enough. But yeah, it was amazing. And obviously, I was relying on a team of super experts in their area who also had to stretch and maybe learn new things to make these tours possible outside the United States. But it's not like I went and did it all by myself. I got to do loads of stuff, but learned from them along the way too.
I love that. I think it's funny. Sometimes people are kind of unfairly expected to be the experts already into a new role, but we should all be growing throughout our career, right? And so you can't just, of course, you're not going to necessarily jump from like being a coordinator to being a GM, but there should always be this knowledge that is expected every jump up, and people should not have this, expectation that someone's just going to come in and hit the ground running and be perfect at everything. And that would be boring for both the person taking that role and for the people learning, because you want fresh perspectives. You want, you need people that are learning, but also, you don't want the person that's already been there, knows everything, because then they think they know everything. You need fresh eyes. You need someone that's going to learn, but they might learn it a different way and learn it a better way,
Yep. And I mean, that's innovation, right? So it is. And I think it's where inclusive and dynamic and innovative teams will involve the experts who are still curious and will involve the fresh eyes. And it takes work. It's easier if you just do what works. And you need the expertise, but yeah, combination thereof.
So after a good 5-year ish run with WWE, you begin pretty much a decade as working with I want to make sure I say this right, Coliseo de Puerto Rico?
Yes, affectionately known as the Choliseo or the Choli.
All right, so tell us about that transition.
So the transition from WWE to Puerto Rico, as I mentioned, was also by design. And it was saying, okay, I've been doing this a few years, like I'm working for this organization, I've got to do a lot and learn a lot, but I think it's time for, what's next? I want to do something new. And maybe now for a little while, I don't have to travel so much and I can be somewhere grounded.
Sure.
But I wanted to stay in the industry. I enjoyed it. So I was like, well, instead of doing the same show in different places, I could do different shows in the same place. So that leads me to being on the venue side. And I made a list of what do I want my life to look like. My family is a little dispersed around the US and the world. So there wasn't a home base to go back to at that point. And I knew from growing up, I can really live anywhere I wanted. One of the things, I'm a solar powered person, I have learned. Vermont is not my place to thrive. And so I wanted to be somewhere warm and there's sunny and things like that. So yeah, we can say that that's not a big deal, but I think we all know weather affects our mood and I like to be sunny. I really wanted to learn to speak Spanish. I did understand it and was starting to do some business in it, but did not speak it that well. Stay in the industry, some other kind of practical considerations. So I was like, well, where can I get this around the world? And I had my little list, and ultimately, long and short of it, Puerto Rico ends up on the list. And so I call, and again, key story of my life for any, people aspiring or, with greater aspirations. I call and I'm like, hey, I think I should go work there. No one called me. I called.
That's great, though. That's it.
I knew the guy to call because I had previously introduced myself to him some years ago at an IAAM conference. And he's like, yeah, that's nice. We don't have a job for you. I'm like, cool, just keep me in mind. And eventually called me back and was like, hey, we need someone to, we're creating this director of events and guest services role and looking for someone, with experience in the industry who can service both the productions and the fan base. And one thing I can say for sure in favor of WWE is that they care about their fans, right? Not all events and are thinking about their fans as much as they do. So I did have that experience. And then on the production side, not many productions are as demanding as they are. So I had that side too. So long story short, I moved down here. And my plan was kind of to stay for 2 years. And then I was thinking about Dubai, which had been on my list. And it's almost 17 years later. And here I am in Puerto Rico, but living a global life. So super happy with that.
Yeah. What is it about Puerto Rico that you love so much? Like what has extended that 2 years into 17 years? Is it just always kind of, once you landed there and lived there for a couple of years, did it just feel like almost a home to your heart, which also sounds super cheesy, but you mentioned you've got, kind of homes and families all over, but like, does it feel like it's home for you?
Yes, very much. And it's exactly that. It's like home for my heart. And just every time I get off the plane and step out the airport, I'm like, and it just feels like this is the place. It's where I feel best. And very much where I feel I have community. And it's just, it's a vibe and a culture that where I feel at home. It's very warm. It's very a place where we really, humans acknowledge humans. And some of these things do sound cheesy, but I think they become cheesy through repetition, but because it's true. And sometimes it's not, like you get biases and stereotypes that are bad. But quality of life for me is wanting to say good morning to everybody. And there are places that, people look at you like you're crazy if you say good morning to them. And where, you just always recognize the other humans around you. And it's a very, it's a welcoming, happy place. And it's very alive. And I just really like it.
Talk to me about climbing that ladder there, because, again, as you mentioned, you started off, as that, director of events, but then I know you became the assistant GM and then to becoming the general manager. How did you make that work for you that you were able to, kind of progress in your career while staying at the same venue?
So climbing the ladder, I think key was having people that would support me and that endorsed me along the way. And I think, we now talk about the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And I've had some key sponsors that said, give her the chance. And I think that in terms of lessons to learn from my own experience that I remind myself and share with others is that those people trusted me to learn. They didn't vouch for me being the expert. I've been able to get people's trust in my career and support through demonstrating that I will not fake knowing things, that I will ask and I will seek support and I will collaborate. I won't pretend to know what I don't know. And that, I remind myself that now sometimes, right? Because it is like, and I am an expert on things now. I hope I always had value to add, but at this point, towards imposter syndrome and things like that, I'm having to remind myself. I was like, oh, look, I know stuff, and I've done some stuff that's really hard for other people. Right. And I work with people who do stuff that's really hard for me, but to demonstrate that, like it's maintaining that curiosity, that openness, and like demonstrating that I'm here to learn and apply what I know as well.
I think that's always a tough line to toe for anyone, both for yourself and also when you're managing other people, but confidence and humility and when to flex which muscle, and you kind of have to use both simultaneously sometimes, but like, okay, I am an expert on this and I need to speak up and tell you why I'm an expert and you need to be able to trust me, but okay, I'm not on this and there's a lot of room to grow and I'm not afraid to admit that and grow in that way. But that's such a tricky thing. And I think we've all worked with probably many people that are better at some aspects of that or, than others, but it's always a tricky line to toe.
Agree 100%. I don't always get it right, but I still go for it.
Now, during this time there, you establish WE Enterprises, right? So talk to us about that.
When I was younger, I meant to be an entrepreneur. I never really imagined myself having like a corporate career. And I feel that I've been able to find these roles where I'm able to have a great sense of ownership and collaboration and being part of global companies, but that I can treat it as my own. And I like to approach things that way. It's not just a job, it's something I really want to be doing and that I'm lucky enough to get paid for. And I still had that entrepreneurial drive. At the same time, started doing speaking and consulting and able to serve on some boards, and got into some investing and doing other things like this, and like to explore that entrepreneurial side of the world in the time that I do have. So that's what it is now.
Obviously, that has allowed you to kind of scratch some itches outside the industry, which is pretty cool. And for a while, you kind of leave the live event industry, right? Where you go and spend some time working, as so many of our guests have done in the hotel industry, but also with Bacardi. Talk to me about leaving and then entering back into the live event industry.
Yeah, leaving hard, entering awesome.
That was pretty good. That sums it up.
Yeah, that sums it up. I think leaving was super hard, but I knew I had to do it, and that I had to try other things. Like I was at kind of a turning point and approaching birthdays and stuff, and I was like, do I keep doing what I know and I'm doing well at, or do I go scratch some of these itches and discover, the adventure of life. So I was like, who am I? And I'm the adventure of life person, so I'm going to go do that. And hopefully I, did well enough in the venue world that if I wanted to return, maybe that door would be open. If not, figure it out later. So I did, and really enjoyed it and learned so much. And I think it's exciting now to return to the industry with other perspectives on understanding how different industries and companies work, and new, just ideas and networks and perspective. So it was exciting. And then the return, it's fantastic. Just last week I was at Venues Now in Austin. And for me, it was like this great reunion of people that I just admire and love working with in an industry that, does feel more like home to me than the other ones did. They were awesome too. But this is where I'm like, just like when I get to Puerto Rico and I'm like, this is where I belong. When I'm back in the industry, I feel the same.
What are some of the key things that you learned from those roles outside the industry that you think you'll bring with you, now that you're back in it? I think that's for people that do sort of dip away and then come back, it's always kind of interesting because some things are, of course, not applicable at all. And other things are, the same, but in different ways. And I think that always is a fun perspective just to kind of see what things look like from outside. That way, when you jump back in, you're like, maybe I was looking at it different, looking at it wrong before. And now I've worked with Bacardi or whatever. And now like you might see partnerships totally differently that you may never have understood before, because now, you're just seeing it through a different lens.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see, a couple of things come to mind. That's a great question. The first thing that really comes to mind is cultural, I think, and maybe goes back to something we talked about at the beginning that you mentioned, and has to do for me with the pace of different industries. So I'm working with OVG and it's high innovation and it's high growth. And so it's high pace, it's people that are on their game, nonstop, go, go, go events and making things happen. And I enjoy that. So Bacardi is about to have their 160th anniversary as a family-owned company. It's a huge global company, 7,000 employees, on track to do $5 billion worth of business and growing, and absolutely amazing. And I love them, and they'll be family forever. They're innovating, they're agile, but it's just a different kind of mechanism, and it's production and it's whole different aspects. So I'm really grateful to have gotten to experience a large global corporate culture and how they operate and learn from that and take away value from that. But, our industry's just got this go, 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 and you get the kind of high of the events and, that energy. And I love it. So culture-wise, that was one of the things. And I spent a brief time working with a technology startup. I learned pretty quickly that wasn't for me. And it had nothing to do with the company or the opportunity, but again, realizing culture-wise what I like. I'm so glad I tried. Now I don't have to spend the rest of my life wondering.
Sure.
But being on a very small team is not where I thrive. Same thing, venues and whatnot is like pretty large teams. I love working with lots of people. Now I'm on a smaller team and I like that because they're all just incredible and we have the pace of it. but also then there's much larger extended teams, and I still have contact with venues and all the people that involves, and I love that. So I think the cultural part is a huge part of it. What you mentioned, Paul, the learning about partnerships, definitely I have new perspectives on that. And I have a very reinforced perspective that I've always had. It was something, part of why I joined Bacardi, as I knew we shared, is in Bacardi language, putting the consumer at the heart. For me, everything we do in live events is about the audience. And I like focusing on other people. In my essence, I'm the hostess, right? The venues were hosts, and sure. I like bringing people together. So yeah, like an OVG, again, I like to work with companies that I resonate with their values, that we're aligned on that. I want my work to have that additional layer of purpose. And it's the same thing for OVG. It's innovating, and how this company is growing and driving value is through focusing on the fan and innovating around the fan experience. And when you do that, it untaps all this stuff. So it's cool to see that applied in the marketing and selling of spirits, and learn from that and from their agencies and their research and all this like rigorous business behind cool spirits brands. And then bring that perspective back to creating amazing experiences and venues.
I think one of the beautiful things about those experiences is you not only discovered so much about yourself on, what kind of team size you like, what kind of pace you like, all these kind of things like that, but it's just going to better inform you on when you're working with those types of businesses, right? So you might think, okay, we in this industry might be working at this speed, but probably a lot of other people are not working at that same speed. Or we in this industry or at this building or whatever might have a team of 300. Well, this company might only have a team of 5. So, if we have certain expectations, we need to make sure those are, realistic for some of the partners we might be working with, because they're probably operating at a different speed and a different size team than we are, so we shouldn't necessarily hold them to that same level.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
One thing you've mentioned that's kind of been a theme through a lot of your career is embracing the diversity, and then empowering women is also, I know, been a big focus and an important topic for you. Tell me how that kind of plays into your current role with OVG.
Okay, yes, something I care about a lot. Same thing. From the first conversation that I had with friends at OVG, and then Francesca, and then Tim, it's always been part of the conversation, and their desire to have a diverse leadership and workforce, and particularly just in finding more women and people with international and diverse perspectives in leadership capacities. So I think that it's very intentional on their part, and I think they mean it. And so that's where I'm here to be part of that. And I'm just not even 3 months in, so I'm still getting to know the company. But last week, I also got to meet a lot of my colleagues that are from all walks of life, right? And that are equally excited about how we are able to bring representation and education and driving that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think that, I would say stay tuned kind of. The company is ramping up on that as, same thing as the world reawakens and we're going to conferences and talking about and creating programs on what we support and believe.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing your passion and your adventures here with us. Before we let you go, I want to hit you with our Fast 5. It's just 5 quick questions, looking for your short, immediate response. First up, what was your very first concert?
Vanilla Ice.
Oh, man.
I guess I don't get to tell the backstory, so I'll just leave it as the truth.
See that? It's a good conversation starter when somebody meets you. How about your favorite concert?
Oh, that's impossible. Don't ask me that.
So many.
How about your favorite vacation spot? I know you would like to travel. So what's if you could get away to anywhere, what's your one go-to?
I think my favorite vacation spot is home, because it's where I come to recharge.
There you go.
I love that.
What's one movie that you can watch over and over again?
I'm so not a movies person. I don't watch movies over and over again.
What is your last question? What's your theme song? There's a reality TV show where cameras follow you all around filming your life. What's the song that plays over the opening credits?
Well, there's a few, but I'm walking on sunshine.
Oh. It's time to feel good. Hey, thank you so much for sharing. If somebody wants to reach out to you or find you, what's the best place for them to? Any plugs you want to give?
I'm not too hard to find if you just Google Wesley Cullen and look for the short blonde-haired woman. Yeah, for anyone that's listening, I would really love to hear from anyone who's doing international work or who is especially interested in doing international work. Sometimes we don't know who to go to or we haven't met those people. So it's a growing number of people. It crosses a lot of places. Same thing. Maybe you're working at a provider or a supplier at an arena and you want to work in Brazil or somewhere else. I don't have all the opportunities or the answers, but I'd love to see us creating more of an international colleagues thing going on. And like I said, especially people who are interested, if they want to know more about my experience or where to follow or people to talk to or just anything, I'd love to hear from them.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you and hope the construction there in the neighborhood quiets down a little bit for you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, guys. You got a super pro at how you do this and balance each other out, and appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I wish I could learn more about you, but I know we'll meet out there and continue to get to know each other.
For sure.
And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We'd love your 5-star reviews so you can help others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone. Let's go find some of that sunshine. Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Arena Marketing Conference, a nonprofit organization bringing together people in the field of live entertainment to discuss marketing, publicity, and sales trends. Find out more at eventarenamarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.